Welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Lee. Our guest today, Seabass of WNWS of Jackson, Tennessee. Today's episode is presented by WellSpire, Nashville's Learning and Development Center. WellSpire offers personal and professional development opportunities in a beautiful facility in the Gulch neighborhood. Stop by for an event with world-renowned speakers or host an off-site event that will wow your team or your clients. We also thank our co-presenting sponsor, the Well Coffee House, which turns coffee into water and has a mission to bring clean water to the world. Our news is presented by Sutherland & Belk, an SEC sports-loving injury firm in Nashville. These guys will shoot you straight on your rights and options. When you've been injured in an accident, call them at 615-846-6200 to get your questions answered. You can also visit them online at sbinjurylaw.com. Nothing really new to speak of, just a repeat of an old item. Isaac McBride has been admitted to Vanderbilt and has joined the roster. McBride, of course, transferred from Kansas, where he did not play as a freshman. McBride was the Gatorade Player of the Year in Arkansas as a high school senior. Our guest line, presented by Boll and Branch, started by Vanderbilt graduates Scott and Missy Tannen. I had no clue what I was missing out on until I got Boll and Branch sheets. They are fair trade certified, meaning they are made under safe conditions by men and women treated and paid fairly. Try them for a month for free. Return them, but you won't want to. Once you get the sheets, try the mattress. That was voted the best mattress of 2018. Go to bollandbranch.com. That is spelled B-O-L-L. Enter the promo code VANDY and get $50 off your first set of sheets. Seabass joins us from WNWS in Jackson, Tennessee, where he is a talk show host, mostly sports, but other things as well. Our friend was very busy last week. They had an employee at the station leave, and he had to pick up some extra stuff, which is why we did not podcast last week. My friend, I know you're still busy. Thank you for joining us today, and I look forward to picking up where we left off a couple of weeks ago, wherever that was.
Yeah, man. Yeah, me too, man. Sit back and talk a little Commodore athletics, man. I'm ready to do it. Yeah, I've been running around like crazy, still am. But, man, if I can't set enough time to sit down and talk a little Commodore sports with you, man, then I don't know what it's all for anyway.
This will be the first show that I've done in 2.5 years with a dog in my office.
O-R-E-O. Oreo is in the house. I love the name, by the way.
That was my daughter's pick, by the way.
Oh, I know. I mean, Bella did good. She couldn't have named it better. I love Oreos. I love dogs. Makes sense.
You want to know something funny, though? His given name was Max, which was the name of one of our last two dogs. We had two Shih Tzus. They're black and white Shih Tzus. They both lived to be 16. And this guy is also a black and white Shih Tzu. He is hilarious. He's got all kinds of energy. He's sweet. Now, he bites everything in sight and chews everything that's not nailed or glued to the floor, and then some things that are. But that's a puppy. He'll get over it, and it's good to have a dog in the house again.
Oh, man. I've got two. I got Miss Bailey and Dr. Sheldon Cooper, and right now, as we podcast, now you've heard them on the podcast a few times. It's like the UPS guy shows up or something like that, but they are both conked out right now, dude. They are laid up, son.
I was thinking, I have not been away from my family for almost 3 months now, or 2.5. Like, literally, I've been out to grocery shop, and that's been it. Otherwise, I am home, and at least one of the other 3 people in this house has been here. I don't know what that has to do with sports, but...
but luckily for you, you like your family. So, I mean, it's all right. It'll work out for you.
It's been, I don't have a lot of complaints. I would like a little time to myself every once in a blue moon, but it beats the alternative of people being sick and all that. And my kids, they've been fighting half the afternoon, so We'll see if that spills over into the
Maybe
podcast.
they'll check in. Yeah, maybe they'll check in later on the podcast.
Yeah, they tend to do that. But anyway, sports related, let's see, since last you and I talked, Romello White is at Ole Miss now.
Yeah.
Isaac McBride is a Commodore. We didn't know if he was finally going to get admitted and signed, but that's happened. I guess, well, the assistant coach news finally went public, which.
But now for Isaac McBride, question though. Now we know he's coming to Vanderbilt, going to be part of this program. But what about from the eligibility side of things?
I asked that on Monday, and they still don't know.
Mm-hmm. And this is a the holdup is a university or an NCAA thing, or both.
I think it's an NCAA thing. I don't know if they filed the waiver yet or to request a waiver. I would presume they have, but you know, he left Kansas. He never played at Kansas. He left in the middle of September. I guess that was technically being enrolled for the academic year. I mean, I would think he should be eligible. First of all, he didn't play at all last year.
Right.
And second of all, you know, he's been out of Kansas for a year almost once a semester starts. Third, something weird went on there. The word out of Kansas was that they ran him off. Now, I don't know if that's what happened or their version of the story or what, but regardless, there was some sort of I don't know if rift is the word between the parties, but something wasn't right. I just think that with Kansas's situation being on probation and him either leaving for that or being run off, that kid should get a waiver at Vanderbilt. But it's the NCAA, so whatever the right thing to do is, or the thing that makes sense, you usually presume the opposite. So I'm just going to presume he can't play next year.
He can't play, but Will Wade can coach. That makes sense.
Yeah, well, I mean, it always makes sense. It's the NCAA.
That's why. I mean, let me tell you something. That's why. And I even said this on the show the other night. And I don't care who hears it. It doesn't matter to me. Sorry if y'all don't like this answer, but don't blame me. Blame the NCAA. After Will Wade is allowed to continue coaching basketball, then I don't care who's bought and paid for. I don't care what somebody spends on them. Go get it. If you can get them, go get them. I no longer care because the NCAA can no longer masquerade as a legitimate entity. They just can't. They can't. And so the way I look at it now is if you got the means, then go get it. Do what you got to do. It's Wild West. If Will Wade is allowed to coach 1 second more, nothing matters.
Was it 2 or 3 weeks ago that you fought me tooth and nail on this?
Well, you know what? Yeah, but who cares? Because
right.
It's not about you and me.
I know.
It's about the message that the NCAA has clearly sent. And as far as I'm concerned, they have no teeth, no claws, or either that or they have no values of any kind. To me, the NCAA either has no teeth and claws or no morals, I guess may not be the right word. But I mean, just why should I get mad anymore, Chris? For what? Who am I mad at? Well, I can't say they're cheating. It's not cheating anymore. Yeah, it's just not cheating anymore. So the way I look at it is, hey, Doors, pony up. And some of this is facetious, but not all of it. I mean, I don't really want us doing that. That's not what I would be that way. But I'm gonna chastise these other programs anymore. I'm not gonna do it because honestly, when you weigh what's at stake versus how the NCAA handles things, the question is, Chris, if you're not doing it, why aren't you?
Technically, it is against the rules, but yeah, I know. I would feel differently about it if it weren't for the schools setting the rules. The schools set the rules, the schools don't abide by the rules, and when the really good coaches at schools get caught, the schools do nothing about it. So, again, it would would be a little different if the rules were set by somebody other than the schools themselves. But when the schools don't see to it that abiding by the rules is important, and when their coaches get caught and the schools do nothing, you've seen it at Kansas, you've seen it at LSU. I mean, the only time a school fires a coach for cheating is if they're looking for a reason to get rid of him anyway. Like UConn did that with Kevin Ollie and cited what was it? NCAA violate. Well, what was hilarious is that Jim Calhoun was there for 30 years or whatever it was, and Calhoun was worse than Kevin Ollie was. And they never objected to it then. Well,
tell me that. What's cheating?
If you're the one setting the rules and you don't care to abide by them, that's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, and that's where I'm at. And hey, I feel the same way about the institution itself. If they could have still canned Will Wade, they had to do something in court, but they could have still canned Will Wade. Chose not to.
If Will Wade goes 12-20, I guarantee you they can him. And then they cite that as reasons why. Then they cite that as a reason to get out of the contract that they owe him. But he wins the SEC, and they don't do anything. That's just how it is.
Yeah. Right. That is how it is. And it's why I'm not going to spend 5 seconds longer fuming over stuff like that, because there's no reason. It's a fool's errand on my part.
Did I ever tell you about the strangest interview I've ever done?
It wasn't
with the recruit. No, this is with the recruit. I don't know if I've shared this on a podcast or not.
Okay, go ahead.
I covered a press conference, and people can figure this out by the timeline and the names, but this would have been circa 2011, 2012-ish, I guess. And there was a certain big-time football prospect in this state who announced his commitment at a local workout facility along with 2 other kids in the mid-state who were also committing to Vanderbilt. And as I'm sitting here holding a recorder to the kid's mouth, his 7-on-7 coach sidles up to me, whispers in my ear, "Hey, ask him something along the lines of how I'm not his handler, because we need to dispel that rumor." Of course, I didn't ask the question, but I just thought, what the heck am I getting into here?
Of course, I know all 3 recruits that you're talking about, and I'm pretty sure I know which one you're talking about here. I'll just say he's probably not from the 615 or the 423.
That is correct.
All right. Then I know who it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I wish I could say that surprised me. That was a highly recruited football player too, by the way.
Yeah, one who did not really pan out.
Did not even remotely pan out. Had a nice play against Kentucky, if I remember correctly, and that not a whole lot more.
Yeah, and that was at a time where a lot of people were having a lot of nice plays against Kentucky.
That was 40-0, right? In Lexington, if I remember correctly. Holy crap.
40-0 was in Lexington, but they beat them down the year before that. And the only reason I remember this is because I did something on Zach Stacy in the Vandy Sports 100 this week. And, I like to link highlight videos from YouTube, just find what's out there on the player and link it to the feature just to give the fans something enjoyable to watch. And, of course, the premier clip on that Stacy highlight film, in my mind, was that run where he dragged literally 7 defenders towards or into the end zone between the 10 and the goal line. And that was, I think, the year before. I want to say that was 2012. I guess they played Kentucky in odd years here. So that would have been either 11 or 13. And Stacy was gone by 13, right? Or was he?
I don't know that that's right.
Either way, I'm on a tangent, but that was another year that they beat Kentucky down, and boy, that script is flipped.
Just a little bit, but speaking of Zach Stacy, I'll tell you what, man. Two things here. First of all, good to see him getting involved on the recruiting aspect, in the positive promotion of the school for a young man that plays the same position from his alma mater, and this Deshaun Morrell kid. I know that I think it was Sean or Justin had a nice pick on him yesterday or the day before. I didn't give Morrell much look the first time around, but the second time around, I sat there and started watching him a little bit more and trying to study up on him the best I could. He would be a very, very acceptable option to Derek Mason in this class. And I know for sure that they want to sign a running back in this class. I would think probably two. And I would imagine that he would have to be near the top of the board for Coach Mason. And it's good to see that they got a guy like Zach Stacy, help promoting this program.
They're going to need a bigger back. It just occurred to me they're not going to have one after this year.
They're going to need a what back?
A bigger back. The backs they've got are more smallish
back
types. Like Marlowe, he's not tiny, but he's a smaller back.
Yeah.
Keon Brooks, same thing.
That's about right, man. I'd like to get us a nice little 6 foot, 225 boulder. That'd be great. Yeah, we could use some more size. And Morrell, I think, is only about 185, 190, something like that. But yeah, I agree. I loved Kari. Kari was a tough dude, man. He was a tough runner. We could use another Kari Blasting game for sure.
The SEC East is probably going to get a little tougher over the next few years because you've got Georgia is going to be a top 10, maybe top 5 program for the foreseeable future. Florida is probably going to be in that top 10 range with Dan Mullen. Tennessee is getting players. South Carolina, I'm not so sure about. Missouri, who knows? Kentucky has certainly gotten a lot better. I think Mark Stoops has got that program on really solid footing.
I agree.
They have really got their work cut out for them the next few years. Vanderbilt does.
They would have their work cut out for them if everything about this program was going right. That's just the truth. Because I'm right there with you. Look, we play on a side of the conference in which in the very foreseeable future, we could see 3 teams sitting in the top 10 just in the East. And, for whatever South Carolina is, they certainly have our number all the time. And as you mentioned, Mark Stoops, that's a top 25 program now. And, Missouri is not bereft of talent. And sometimes it goes away a little bit. And the next thing you know, they're back up again and they're rolling. Remember, were they undefeated or a one-loss team and undefeated in the SEC when they came to Nashville last year? We were their downfall.
I believe they were 5-0. Now, it was not a 5-0 that included a really good win, but they had smashed people coming into that game.
Yeah, there was absolutely no reason to believe Vanderbilt was going to win that football game. And they did. They found a way to get that done. But even if we're on good footing, and we're getting the support that we just desperately need from the school itself, it would still be difficult. It just would, Chris. We play in the SEC. There's no way around it. We schedule moderately difficult games. I think we got what coming up in the future, Chris. Stanford, Kansas State. There's not a lot of Mercers out there. You can't even take those for granted. We barely beat TSU a couple of years ago. So, yeah, now the one thing I'll say is like I told you this, I do feel pretty good about some of the new coaches, and I have been a fan of the recruiting. Coach Mason has to change a lot of things about this program that have been the same way for a while. But, he's made a lot of changes to this program in the offseason. At the end of the day, we still are going to be starting a brand new quarterback, and our offensive line is completely inexperienced. But, man, I'm excited about some of the possibilities, some of the unknowns. There's some storylines out of the season. Do I expect to be a good football team? Probably not. Wins may be tough this year, but I'm excited to see, do we get beat just because we simply don't have talent, or do we have a game plan, but the inexperience is just killing us? But you can tell that, with another season, some more seasoning behind us, some more reps, that some of these guys have massive upsides. All of a sudden we're much tougher to run the ball against because we got bigger, faster, better defensive linemen. I love some of the receivers that are coming into this program. There was a conversation on one of the threads the other day, and I don't really post a whole lot, but I said I really believe that a true freshman wide receiver is going to be a major part of the passing game equation this year. I feel that. You know who I think it is. I've made no secret of that. I think the dude's coming in and playing right away, and that's Logan Kyle. But we'll see. You never know. You got to get in here and do it first. I think somebody posted a video about him, Chris, on the site. I don't know if you got a chance to see that. It's about a minute long with him working out with some folks and just going through drills. I mean, he's just constantly working. I think he's much closer to a more of a polished player, ready, physically and mentally to come in and play. And I think they're going to need that, and there's a lot of question marks here. New coordinators, new quarterbacks. I mean, think about this. We don't have a single quarterback who's thrown a pass for our team. Not one. So whoever it is, I love their upside, but whoever it is going to be brand new, and they're backup too, and they're backup as well. So there's a ton of questions, but I'm excited, to see a defense that returns all of its starters, some of the young freshmen, some of the young red shirts that we haven't got a chance to see, like Devin Body, people like that. I'm interested to see all that. So while I'm not expecting a bowl season this year, I think it's too much to ask and too many unanswered questions going in, but I think there's a reason to be moderately excited about some of the things that I see with football.
Would you object to me hitting the pause on that topic for a bit? Because that was a question that was asked in the mailbag, and I wanted to dig in on that a little bit later.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
that's okay. That's totally fine. The other reason was that you touched on two things that I took some notes on as you were talking that I wanted to hit on. I have grabbed the media guide, which has got future opponents in there, and this was the media guide for last year, so they would have put this thing out probably August of last year, and I'm sure there's been some teams added to the schedule. I may try to look that up as we're talking, but here are out-of-conference opponents. Of course, this year, Kansas State on the road, Colorado State, Louisiana Tech, and, of course, Mercer, the other team in there, that won a home game. So 7 home games this year. 2021, that's East Tennessee State, Colorado State, Stanford, and Houston. Stanford and Houston are here. CSU is on the road. 2022, a trip to Hawaii. Elon is in Nashville, Wake Forest in Nashville, and a road trip to Northern Illinois. In 2023, Hawaii comes here. Charleston Southern comes here. A road trip to Wake Forest and a road trip to UNLV. I did not realize that or had forgotten that. 2024, SMU is in Nashville, Georgia State on the road, and then 2025, Georgia State here. Now, I want to say there was at one point a road trip scheduled to Stanford. Oh, maybe 2028 or 29. That's not listed here. I don't know if that's been canceled. But that, again, is what Vanderbilt listed officially about, 9-10 months ago.
I would say that it's the best time to be playing Stanford because they're not bad. I mean, it's Stanford. But they hadn't been as scary. They hadn't been, you know what I mean? In the past, they seemed a little bit more beatable, especially since McCaffrey's been gone. But even still, I mean, we got 2 SEC West opponents, all 6 SEC teams. Then you sprinkle in teams like Stanford, and then even a team like Houston. I mean, honestly, I think if you made me gauge what we are, not when we're at our best, but on the whole, from an average standpoint, from a talent standpoint and an ability standpoint, that's about the level that I put us at, Chris. I'd say we're about a Houston. Am I shooting too high, too low? About right?
What kind of time frame do you want to use?
That's hard to answer because that's always a fluid thing. Let's go with just right now. 3 years on either side.
Oh, I'd take Houston. I mean, Houston had Tom Herman and had it going not long ago.
Yeah, well,
I mean, at Houston's
I'll,
height in the last decade, it was just better than Vanderbilt. And no, Vanderbilt did beat Houston in the Birmingham Bowl, so it was that. But that was also catching Vanderbilt at its high point, and that wasn't an easy game.
it's hard to gauge if we're using a time frame like that, but I just mean from like an overall talent standpoint, recruiting, everything. I mean, you got to compare it to somebody. So I mean, we could use a time frame on anybody, but I mean, to me, it would be somebody about on the level of a Houston. I think if we play them 10 years in a row, I think it's probably 50-50.
I'm going to pull up Houston. Houston was 8-5 in 2018, 7-5 in 17, 9-4 in 16, 13-1 in 15, and 8-5 in 14. Yes, I get playing an easier schedule, but
An excessively easier schedule. Not just,
yeah, but
yes, I get. But look, no, you can't just put but there, because when you have to stack what we have to stack on top of each other, that's everything, man. That means everything. We don't get East Carolina and Tulane, Connecticut, and Great Grand Mammy Tech. We go from South Carolina to Georgia, Florida, Ole Miss. And we don't stop. Then we go to Kentucky, and this year it might be LSU, then Tennessee. I mean, they don't have to do that. And if you think that doesn't make all the difference in the world, you're crazy. It means everything. Think about it like this. Memphis 2 years ago was a very good football team, a very good football team. But they went to Columbia, Missouri and got physically pimp slapped by a good team, but in comparison to our schedule, they're just a middle of the road team. And they were far superior to them physically and handled them. That's what, and Memphis was every bit the team Houston was.
were any of Houston's
In fact,
teams
I
in
didn't
that
expect that.
span as bad as the ones at Vandy fielded in 14, 15 last year and 17, in your opinion?
I don't think so, but I mean, it's just like boxing, Chris. You've got some dude who's 19-1 or 19-0, and he hasn't fought anybody. He's beaten a bunch of nobodies and some decent guys who have maybe done a little boxing and won some tough man contests. And then you put them in the ring with somebody who has the experience, who is bigger than they are and faster than they are. And you might be 19-0, 19-1, but you've never been hit like that before. And boom, next thing you know, okay, let's say you manage to get by him. And the next guy you fight after that is even bigger and even better. And then the next guy after that is even bigger and even better. You better have adapted. You better have done something. You can't just be the same boxer you were, or you're dead. What Central Florida did was awesome a couple of years ago. They were a very good football team. Very, very good. One of the better teams in the country. Yes, they beat Auburn in a BCS bowl game. That's awesome. But what if they'd had to play Auburn and Alabama and Mississippi State and LSU and Florida and Georgia? I think you know the answer to that question. They're not built to win those games that way. They're just not.
Houston went 4-8 last year, which I'd say
But King redshirted. Remember that kind of.
Oh, that's right. They did that screwy thing last year. But okay, let's put Vanderbilt in the American. Houston's win totals, again, working backwards from 18, 8, 7, 9, 13, and 8. I don't know. I just don't think they win. So that's what? It's 45 wins in 5 years. I don't think Vanderbilt's going to win 45 games, even in the AAC over that span. Not with the teams
with that schedule. Tell me why.
Well, I mean, look, it couldn't beat UNLV last year, and I know that's picking one of the worst of the worst, but It gave up an SEC record for points in 17. Look, they've had some bad teams. They had some decent teams too, but I don't think you can use that as the bar to judge their team is just take the best and ignore the bad. There's been a lot of bad in there.
That's right. But look, here's why you meet in the middle, because you're right. The UNLV was inexplicable. It was truly one of those games. They weren't the more talented team, but it was one of those games. Would Houston have beaten UNLV? Probably so. Would Houston have beaten Missouri? Absolutely not. No. And so you find somewhere in the middle, which is why I'm comparing them to this team. I understand the numbers. I get all that. They've clearly got more wins, but you put them on put them with our schedule, and I guarantee you that win total sits somewhere probably around where we have it.
Well, let's compare apples to apples. Let's call last year a push. Let's see. So Vanderbilt in the same span, when Houston won 45, Vanderbilt won 24. I don't know that 24 wins in the SEC with 8 games a year is apples to 45, but
okay. Let's go back to 2 years ago when Vanderbilt's playing in the Texas Bowl. It was the bowl we were in, right? The Texas Bowl.
That is correct.
The one against Baylor. Against a very good Baylor team that we were track meeting all day long and lost in the last few minutes of the fourth quarter. Who would you have taken in that game if they were playing Houston instead of Baylor? I know the answer. I just want to hear you say it.
I'll give you that for 1 year, but
last year too. That's what I'm saying. I mean, you're going to have to go on times when Vanderbilt was clearly at their worst. But you must still factor in that conference schedule too. That's what I'm saying. You would probably have definitely have taken Vanderbilt the last 2 years over Houston. Agreed. And all I asked was for 3 years on either side.
Do you want to settle it with Sagarins?
We can if you want to.
I don't know what else to do here.
Here's what I'd say then. Okay, if you're not willing to do that, then tell me who. Tell me who. You're not going to say something crazy like Rice. I know you wouldn't do that. So, if not a team like Houston, I'm really interested to see just exactly who you think we are.
You mean outside the Power Five?
Well, Houston's not in the Power Five, so. And then that was the comparison that I used, but they're still Division I. I don't want you using.
I think they're
Mason.
Closer to Tulane than they are Houston.
Oh man! Well, first of all, Tulane was a much better football team last year than they have been. But man, come on!
You can't just take a high watermark for a team and throw out all the bad stuff, and then when another team is good, you say, well, they were unusually good last year, and then throw that out and discard the good. You've got to play it both ways.
I didn't even mention James Franklin teams, or the fact that we beat Houston in the bowl game. You did. I'm not going high water mark for us and using everybody else's low points. But I know one thing's for certain: this program's a hell of a lot better than Tulane. And closer to Houston than they were Tulane. I'll be totally bullish on that. There's in fact, other than last year, there's not a year they wouldn't have smoked Tulane. Let me. Derek Mason's first year, they may not have smoked Tulane. they may not have smoked Tulane, but other than that. Yeah, they would easily have handled Tulane, no doubt.
Vanderbilt last year in the Sagarins was 110. Houston was 72. If the teams played on a neutral field, Houston would have been an 8-point favorite.
You know what? And I bet you if I would have said, Chris, as a friend of yours, I'll slice that number more than in half, and I'll just take 4 on that neutral site for $250. There is no way you take that bet. No way.
Were we watching the same team last year?
Were you watching Houston last year?
No, but I know what I watched on my
They
end.
went 4-8 and played in the AAC. So that kind of tells you all you need to know. There's nothing special about AAC football. There's a couple of decent teams at the top, but it's nothing special at all. Believe me, most of those teams would either be by far the worst team in the SEC or right damn near it. That's just where they are. It is what it is. I didn't make that up. That's just how it is. But yes, I'm aware we were not good. I saw it. I saw it. I saw every play of every game. No doubt. But I wasn't just talking about last year. This was a bowl team 2 years ago, and they were either what was it, Chris? Were they either favored or it was close?
Vanderbilt was favored in the bowl game.
Yeah, you think Tulane would have been favored in that game? No, they'd have been getting 20 points. But look, it doesn't matter. This is, at the end of the day, it's about who we are. I'm just trying to figure on par who we are on par with. And I don't believe that it's Tulane.
So again, tell me what the qualifications are for the question before I give you my answer.
Just who on a level of overall talent from a recruiting standpoint and overall talent, when they take the field. And you can throw coaching in there if you want to, because you have to. It's part of the program. Who are we on the level of?
Man, I want to say Wake Forest, but Wake's been better the last few years.
I'd take Wake Forest all day long. And I think it's very fair. In fact, I'd probably take Wake Forest over us.
Yeah.
But it's a much closer comparison.
Yeah. Okay. Wake was 3-9 and 14, 3-9 and 15, 7-6 and 16, 8-5 and 17, 7-6 and 18.
And remembering that the ACC has been trash lately.
Well, Dave Clawson has got it headed in a pretty good direction there. It took him a couple of years because he had a mess. Look, I think historically that's a pretty good comp.
Yeah, I'll take that all day. I think that's right, and I think it's fair. Okay. And I think it's sustainable.
I was looking up the schedule back to that, and I found some other ones that I had on there. Again, these weren't in the media guide last year, but last I checked, this is what we have on our site because we have a future schedules thing. Okay, let's start. I think we left off at 2025. So let's pick up there. This is what I had down, that they had a home game with Stanford in 2025. Again, the game with Georgia State in Nashville. There was supposed to be a Colorado State game in Nashville 2025. That's not in the media guide either. In fact, I had a date for that, September the 27th. And then a road trip to Colorado State in 2026, a home game with NC State in 2026, at Stanford in 2027, SMU in Nashville in 2028, at NC State in 2028, the return game with Purdue here in 2029. Man, that's really spaced out. That's a 10-year gap. And then the away game with SMU in 2029 is what we have on the site. Again, those were not verified on the media guide, but I had gathered those from different places where those were published. So anyway,
what would you say if I told you, Chris Lee, that 2029 tryst with Purdue is going to be the winner of that game is going to propel themselves into the consideration for a BCS playoff?
I would say you had a really good chancellor at Vanderbilt if that's the case.
You think?
Yeah, well, that's the only way.
Supposed to be funny, Chris. Over you.
I've still got it. Did I've still got my head down in schedules here? Because I was looking for 2021, right? Because I want to know. To me, and I'll get to this in a little bit. 2020 in football to me is not about 2020; it's about 2021. And the schedule is, I have it. They open with ETSU in Nashville. They go to Colorado State. Stanford here, Houston here, after a bye week in between. Mississippi State here, Ole Miss on the road, Florida on the road. Okay, once we get to the conference schedule, it's not in order, but the West teams, Mississippi State here, Ole Miss on the road, and then in the East they've got Florida, South Carolina, UT on the road, Georgia, Kentucky, Missouri at home. I will take my chance with the Mississippi schools, not knowing anything else 2 years out, rather than have Auburn, Alabama, whoever on there.
Yeah. Of course, now they're coached by Lane Kiffin, by Lane Kiffin and by Crazy Man. So, I mean,
yeah, but well, that one, and that's true. But I don't know that he's gonna. Either of those coaches are gonna have those teams being Auburn, Alabama, or LSU,
or be there by then either.
right. So there's that. The second question I wanted to ask you, or I wanted to get into, was again, and I'll get into 2020 and why I think it's really about 2021 later when we get to the mailbag. But I was thinking, there's been some rumblings that they might move on from Mason after this year. Now, that was before the virus thing hit. I will believe it when I see it. I think it's going to cost him $7 million to move on for one. After this year, came from a pretty good place.
Okay, so but let me ask you this: what is being said here? We're moving on, or we're moving on if this number is not reached?
That I don't know. I mean, I presume if he, say, goes to a bowl game with this team, it'd be hard for them to do it at that point. That the combination of him getting owed $7 million.
Let me tell you something. He gets a bowl game and he's SEC Coach of the Year.
Well, yes. Although this situation is of his making, so I think that 7 years in, you ought to go to have a winning season at some point. That's just me. But what I was going to get at is if he does indeed get 2021, okay, if they haven't extended the contract at that point, he's a lame duck coach, I think. In other words, he's going into 2021 without a contract, and recruits are going to know that. That's hard to recruit to. So either you let him hang out there, but here's what I was really thinking. What if he has a winning season in 2021? What if he whiffs on the first 7, then he has a winning season in 2021? Awfully hard to get rid of a coach at Vandy coming off a winning record. So then what do you do?
Well, let me ask you this. If he has a winning record in 2021, this is very difficult for me because what I believe. It's not where you're from, it's where you're at. We can start talking about what has happened in the past and what he did or did not do, but if these new coordinators and some of the personnel equate to winning football, and he wins 7 games in 2021, what sense would it make to fire him? You brought him this far for him to finally get it, and then you'd fire him? To what end? I mean, what message would that even say? And it's either a great message or it's a terrible one. The great side is that you can win 7 games, and we're so ready to win that that's still not enough. Or the message is, good Lord, dude, I won 7 games and I still couldn't hold on to my job. I mean, if I'm another coach, I'm thinking to myself, he won 7 games and got fired. He's at Vanderbilt. What am I supposed to do? I don't want to take a job. I'm a hot young coach. I'm going to take this job. I win 6 games, max for a season. In 3 or 4 years, I lose my job. I've got to win 8 games at Vanderbilt to keep my job. I don't know. I mean, look, if he wins 7 games in 2021, he should not be let go. I wouldn't. Doesn't make sense. It's not where you're from. It's where you're at. This is college. This is major college football.
What do you think is more descriptive? What's your career record or what you just went?
it's not exact, obviously, because there's certain variables that you have to factor in. Why I'm this in the immediate because of this. But I mean, even if I went 20 and 35, and I just want, but I have it where I want it now, and I'm winning, and you can see a plan for me going forward. Firing me would be the wrong move unless you have somebody that is clearly superior to me and ready to take this job and all that comes with it. Firing him with 7 wins in 2021 makes no sense at all.
I'm going to give you a hypothetical. Let's say he goes 3-9 this year, which I think is entirely fair. I think he is within 1 win either way of that number. I think he's either going to win 2 to 4, but I don't see it. I mean, I guess he could win 1, but I think they're good enough to win 2. Let's just go with 3-9. So then he's 30 and 56 after this year. Let's say they win 7 and lose 6 the next year. Then he's 37 and 62. What are you going to do with a coach who is 37 and 62 after year 8? Because you can't sign him. You're not just going to give him a 1-year rollover, right?
Why not?
Recruiting.
What are you worried about? What, Chris? That you're going to lock him down to a 5-year deal because you're worried about recruiting?
Well, if you don't believe in him more at that point than to give him more than 1 year, then what's the point?
That's my very question. What's the point? Why would you believe in him less after he's winning more? That doesn't make sense.
Okay, so you're the AD. He is 37 and 62 and coming off a 7-6 season in 2021. What's your call? What do you do on the contract?
Here's what I'm going to, and what was this? His final year? Was that his final year? He has no contract at all right after this, right?
Correct. He's done after 2021. You have to do something. You either have to hire a new coach or you have to give him a new contract.
No problem. Sing for your supper, Derek. We have been together for a long, long time now. I love what you did this season. Show me the plan for going forward. I'm looking at this. So in 2021, the chances are my quarterback is probably just going to be going to 2022, just a junior. Young players. I just won 7 games. I've got 15 starters coming back on both sides of the ball, 8 on offense, 7 on defense. Projections are that we will win 7 games again, possibly even 8. Derek, here's the deal. You replicate or best what you did last year, and I'll give you another 3 years. You've had your bad, you've had your good, but here's where we are. We have a chance to take it to another level. You want the security? Show me this wasn't a flash in the pan. You do it again. You win 7 games again, 3 more years. If not, we have to have a conversation at the end of the year if we regress. Look, you're going to rock the boat one way or the other. If it's recruiting, this, that, I mean, that's just going to happen. You get over that. You deal with that. You don't stick with something terrible if you think it's terrible because you're worried about those effects. You bite the bullet and you get it done, but you make him sing for his supper. And if he can do it again, then he has clearly turned the corner, and I can see giving him 3 years after that.
So you're basically going triple or nothing.
Triple or nothing? No, I said we would have a conversation at the end of the year if he didn't. If you believe in yourself, gamble on yourself right here, okay? Gamble on yourself without this extension, and if you prove that this was not a flash in the pan, you're going to get rewarded about it. This is easy. And if you can't, then we have to have a tough conversation, and I need to know why you're still my coach.
Okay, what if you're the AD and Will Healy is an option for you at any of those junctures?
At any of those junctures? Well, as you know, I like Will Healy well before any of y'all did. But if Derek Mason's winning football games, look, let me tell you something. I am quite okay going 7-5 in Nashville. Believe that. I'm not one of those. I don't have to be 10-2. If this team can play winning football, competitive, hard-hitting winning football, and the administration's backing it, 7-5 is all right with me. I can live in that neighborhood just fine. If Derek is doing that, unless I truly believe that Will Healy is so good that he turns us into a 9-10 win a year guy, 9-10 win per season team, then maybe I take a look at that. But if Derek Mason's coaching winning football and we're competitive, then he's my guy.
Well, let's go to the mailbag, shall we?
All right. Well, we shall.
The mailbag is sponsored by Vanderbilt fan and independent insurance agent Josh Minton of Brentwood. If you need home, auto, motorcycle, renters, landlord, life, or commercial insurance, Josh is the guy you need to contact. Call him 615-933-1979. Email him at josh@hqinsurance.com. Follow him on Facebook at JD Minton HQ. He's my insurance agent. Give him a try, and I think you'll be pleased. TC Stevenson says, is there any reason I should be optimistic about football this year? You answered some of that earlier. I said, let's table it, so let me let you finish your thoughts on that now.
I had pretty much said what the optimism that I had. There's only so much of that to go around, and I shared that earlier. I'm more. It's not even so much. I'm intrigued by the unknown. Look, I get we've got issues. I understand that, but I like some of the changes, and I like some of the young players, and I'm interested to see what kind of early impact this year it is. For me, it's more about has Derek Mason learned his lessons in certain aspects, and can we look different? Even if the win-loss results aren't the same this year, can it look different? Can I see a true plan going forward? And if I can, then I'm cool. I don't want to go 3-9. Good Lord. And no one wants to go 3-9. I get that. But I also know that we're capped right now on our potential. They wouldn't say that, but I think it's realistic right now. It just is in this conference. But if I can see, man, that we got a play caller, and it's clear that we've got one. If I can see that defensively, Ted Roof and some of these assistants are making a big difference schematically, that we're a little bit more aggressive and we're learning to tackle better. I'll accept the losses and the lumps because of the inexperience. I'm all right with that. What I won't be all right with is if I go out and I see the same crap, just different names in the program, and a different number on the calendar, then I won't be okay with that. I can live with taking some lumps just as long as I see a plan in place. That's where I'm at right now, Chris. I don't know how to put it any other way.
Yeah, I think you and I would answer that along the same lines. I will take it further. This is what I think their lineup would look like in 2021. You would have, I guess, Ken Seals as your quarterback, assuming he wins and keeps the job. We haven't seen Mike Wright yet, but they're in better hands at quarterback heading into 2021 than into 2020. I mean, barring something just crazy. I think for sure they're in better hands there. So at running back, I'm guessing you've got either Brooks or my favorite guy, Marlowe, there. You've got a receiver. You've got Cam Johnson.
We don't know what we have in the young man in the Griffin, Rocco Griffin.
Okay, well, yeah. I'm presuming that upperclassmen,
because they're part of the same class. Well, but see, the reason I said is because they're part of the same class.
Right. No. Okay.
And I know that you've seen Ken Seals in spring for a limited amount of time, so you at least have something to go on. But I mean, the point is he still hasn't played yet. So, I mean, it's not like we're comparing different classes. They're in the same signing class.
Yeah, fair enough. But, okay, moving forward, the receivers would be Cam Johnson, Amir Abdul-Rahman, and probably Devin Body. And I'm just going to go through starters. If there's a notable backup in here, I'll mention it. Tight end Bresnahan, tackles Steen and Stewart, and God knows what in the middle. You lose Clemens as a senior, and then you've got Dawkins and Miller at the other two spots. We still don't know if either of those kids can play. But I think the other 8 spots, I can see a path to them being respectable there. Defense, you lose all those seniors, but you've got a lot of experience. You could line up on the line. You could go Reitmeyer, Davis, Langham, and say McAllister. And
Green.
And Green is a backup. Like I said, I'm just going mostly starters And I'm looking off the two deep depth chart that I sent to Lindy's, right? That's how I'm doing this. And I'm taking out the guys that had starters and moving the backups up. So at linebacker, you could go, oh boy, who knows? Owusu, DeVault Smith, Orgy at that point, maybe. That's a crapshoot. Defensive back, you could go B.J. Anderson, Allen George at the corners, Mahoney at your nickel. Those are all three returning starters. You could go, your safeties are Coppett and Daly. They'll be gone. But you could go Jerkins and Worship, who played a lot of ball by then.
And let's say this, if I may, if I can have one freshman liberty, if you don't mind, the young man, and I'm sorry, I've gone blank on the one that they somehow was able to still sign from Louisiana, the one that Florida State and Ole Miss were after, and then we still, Donovan Kaufman. If you'll give me one indulgence on a freshman, he's playing.
Yeah, and that's fine. I mean, it seems like we played that exercise before. Like we did it with Orgy, and we're like, well, there's no way that kid won't be a factor. And I mean, he's barely gotten on the field. But yes,
that's
I mean,
fair.
and I'm just doing this with more known quantities, right? My point is, the outlook for that roster is way better heading into 2021 than it is as we sit here looking at 2020.
Totally agree. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, and that's where, if you want to know hope, that's where mine is like you hope that you get these young players in and develop, and you've got something to look forward to in 2021. Because you look back through Vanderbilt football history, and even when it got really, really bleak, and I'm talking like 79, 80, look, those guys were all taking their lumps then, and they were awful, but they went to the Hall of Fame Bowl in 82. A lot of the same kids that were playing then and just terrible. That's what experience does. And you've seen that, with Woody's teams. They were the same. They were awful. Then they got close and almost went to the bowl in, 98 or whatever. You saw that, James Franklin took some of Bobby Johnson's recruits. You remember just how awful they were with Caldwell in 2010. 2011, that was a 6-7 team that was a better than I mean, I know their record was 6-7, but that team was better than that.
Agreed.
That was a 7, probably 8-win team with the right schedule. They just lost to some tough teams this year and lost some close games. And then, of course, we know what happened in 11 and 12. My point is, just about no matter how bleak it has gotten in a span at Vanderbilt, there's almost always, once you have these same guys sticking around, that year when those guys were all juniors and seniors, when it comes together and you've got a lot of guys who've come back and started, history has shown those teams are usually fairly competitive and sometimes making bowls. So you and I are looking for the same thing this year. I don't think there's a very good shot at all that they get to even 5 or 6 wins, but I can see where you have a reason to be interested because you got your eye on 2021 and some reasons to think that it could get better then.
I agree. It's just the only problem is, because I'm always looking for that "you better get us now" type of deal. Well, we're in the SEC. That's not going to scare anybody. You know what I'm saying? I mean, yeah, just because we're there and we're going to build up, the other teams are going to sit around and wait for that. They're still constantly reloading too. So our job is always going to be difficult, but it's about us. And I hate to be cliche-ish, but about the things that we can control. And if we do that, this program's capable of winning 6-7 games a year. They just are, and I guess you got to make a decision on if that's good enough for you. And I think most Vanderbilt fans would tell you, absolutely. That's not what you strive for, but you understand your limitations until this university decides that they really want to win in athletics and football. There's only so far they're going, regardless of Will Healy being there or anybody else. It's weird to say we need their backing when they're the actual school. It should be the other way around. But if we were to somehow do that, then I start looking at us differently. Then I start thinking, who knows? I mean, I'm not talking SEC titles or anything, but I know this. I know the funds are there. That's not ever been in question. And I know that turns this into another podcast, and I certainly get all that. But if that new direction is coming and we get that, then who knows what this program could be.
Yeah, and to kind of merge what you're saying and what I'm saying, and I'll give you some history, okay? 79, they are 1-10. 80, they're 2-6. 81, they get better, they go to 4-7. 82, of course, they go 8-4 and lose in the Hall of Fame Bowl. Reload in 83. 84, they're back to 5-6 with the veteran team. Then a few years off. The 80s under Watson Brown just didn't go well. If you want to skip to the 90s, you have those two DiNardo teams in 93, 94. Again, they both went 5-6. So right on the verge of bowl eligibility. We mentioned the Music City Bowl team. That was a little bit different animal. They had some younger players, and that was kind of out of the blue. And then it goes to Franklin, which we talked about. So, yeah, I mean, the problem is that just where they are as a program, and this will never change till they commit, is that their ceiling's always going to be, okay, maybe squeak into the bowl and maybe win it, maybe get the winning season. But even when, because I think what you said is true, they're still playing against the SEC, but the point is, even with all those things, that's always been the constant. Just through experience and having guys that are fourth and fifth year players, they're usually pretty competitive and right around 500, even in a dog-eat-dog league. That's what experience means, and I think that's their hope. If they're ever going to get past that, because the cycle is then you have that one season, and then you're usually bad for a couple, and then you hope you're competitive again in 2 or 3 years. But even in competitive is, can you just get your head above 500? For them, that's a success. They'll never get further than that unless they decide they're going to commit to football. But even in the midst of the bleakness, they've always had that year every fourth or fifth year where you've got some hope. And I think 2021 is potentially that for them. There's a lot of ball to be played every now and then. And that's kind of why, to circle back to the question I asked you about Mason and the contract a while back, that's kind of why I was getting at that, because I could see that being a really interesting scenario 2 years from now.
Well done, sir. We are going to have to put a bow on this quite soon, my friend. I have got to get ready to do my show.
Yeah, well, let's do it right now. The kids are getting restless. They've already been invaded once or twice. So let's go ahead and tell people where they can find your show, where they can find you on Twitter.
Oh, you can find me on Twitter at Cheap Seats Bass, my friends. And you can find me at 101.5 FM in Jackson, Tennessee, Monday through Friday, 6 to 8 p.m. on the Cheap Seats.
Thank you, sir, and be safe.
Thank you.
He is Seabass.
Thank you, brother.
You bet. He's Seabass. I'm Chris Lee, the host of the Vandy Sports Podcast. We appreciate you listening. We'll be back with more episodes next week.